You're listening to Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Two fans, two generations, all things Star Wars begins now.
All right, well, hello everybody. I'm Eric Vansel, and Daryl will be joining us momentarily. He just got back. He's firing up the system. You know, we're making our live return after, I don't know, it seems like a long time actually. And he just popped on. All right, so let me see. We're going to be producing a little bit live on the air here. Say something so I know we got you. You there?
Hey.
All right, there we go. All right, so we're back. That's good. I just got Dragonfly Mask, of course, is joining us. Ronaldo's joining us. So I'm actually glad that you guys were able to join us at such a late hour tonight.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, look, with the work schedule, sometimes, we can't always go on exactly when we want to go on, but we didn't really want to change the day or anything like that. So we thought, well, you know what? Let's just go on a little bit later and hopefully people are joining us. And it looks like people are actually joining us live, which is amazing. Again, if you guys like us, you want to support us, be sure to hit that like button, hit the subscribe button if you haven't already done so. So, let's get right into this, man. We got like 2 episodes to review. Now, what's really interesting about this is when we did the first 2 episodes, of course, they were given to us together. So we did episodes 1 and 2.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, tonight we're going to do episodes 3 and 4. It's almost tempting in a way to just, keep letting it go. And like next time we do, like 5 and 6 and then 7 and 8. I don't know. It probably wouldn't work. But one of the interesting things is I read that they're actually going to release the next episode theatrically. Yeah.
That's weird and interesting.
I know. This Tuesday, it's apparently episode 5 is going to be in theater. Of course, it's not around us. I checked because I thought,
Okay.
well, that'd be kind of cool for us to go to, actually. But yeah, it's not happening around us. But, it just shows that I think that means that that's going to be a really big episode. It's going to be a pivotal episode. We'll find out, obviously. Who knows? But again, I am glad that, everybody who's joining us is joining us. So, for me, with episodes 3 and 4, I thought episode 3 was it was okay. I thought there was a lot of more dumb decision-making, writing like an animated series. It was pretty much more of the same problems. But episode 4, on the other hand, I thought, okay, now we're actually into a more Star Wars type of a thing. The writing got better. The character development got better. Of course, I got a ton of notes here for each episode, but if I had to, overall just kind of give a thought here, that's sort of where I'm landing with episodes 3 and 4. What about you?
Episode 3 kind of gave me more of the same. Like you said, it kind of still had that clunky kind of vibe to it. It really didn't. It was like I said, it was just okay. Even episode 4, though, I wasn't completely moved by it. It had some cool things to it. Some things were done a little bit better, and then other things were just still kind of like you wanted more. I'm still trying to figure out, like, when are we really going to deal with Ahsoka? So this is, I think we're heading to that point.
Mm-hmm.
So considering how episode 4 ended, so hopefully that reveals a lot more. But that's kind of really what I'm waiting on.
No, I don't blame you. Look, as far as episode 4 goes, I just felt like the writing got better. The lightsaber duels were a lot better. Like everything, the character interaction I thought was better. It felt a little bit more like Star Wars. But all that said, I agree. We're still not, forgive me for saying this, David, if and when you're watching this, it's still not at the level of Andor. It's still not at the level of some of the better Mandalorian episodes. But episode 4 for me felt a little bit less like Filoni was writing for an animated series. Because even episode 3, look, and we'll get into this obviously in detail, but episode 3 pretty much had a lot of the same issues. And that is that, it was still feeling like Filoni was writing an animated series. Again, I'll get into this a little bit more, but there wasn't really, it suffered a little bit from the sequel trilogy's lack of any real danger. You didn't really feel like the characters felt like they were in any real danger. Whereas with episode 4, I did feel some of that tension. So I thought there were some improvements there, but I absolutely agree with you that we still haven't really reached the full potential of this series. And one of the things that I've been getting from a lot of YouTubers that have been reviewing this is the fact that, and I'm pretty much in agreement with all of them, to be honest, and that is the series still has incredible potential. Like, it could still meet the expectations that we all set for it, but it just hasn't yet. Let me get this in here. So David, of course, does join us. And, he says, TGIF, it's Star Wars Day. Hopefully y'all get it 100 tonight and admit y'all wrong and the show sucks. I should say this too, David. Based on your comment that you left on our stuff, you did finally watch the Sith Lords episode that, essentially was recorded just for you at this point because you're the only one supporting us at that Jedi Master level. So I'm glad you finally saw it. He ended up liking your number 5, by the way, which I actually kind of forgot who your number 5 Sith Lord was, but he did acknowledge that he agreed with your number 5. So I just thought that was worth putting out there. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess we can start to get into this a little bit. Of course, you guys that are watching, David said he's very grateful. You guys that are watching, definitely chime in on this right now, because we're really going to get into this. So obviously, we'll start with episode 3, and then we'll sort of move into episode 4. But again, my initial thoughts on this was, it was okay. Like, I didn't hate it, right? Like, I mean, I don't hate the show. I think it's good. I think on a certain level, you can enjoy it. So in other words, it's not the Book of Boba Fett. And this is why, David, I will not admit that the show sucks, because it does have its problems, but it's not quite at the level of the Book of Boba Fett or even Obi-Wan in some cases, where it suffered some major issues that definitely damaged the show. I mean, look, the acting is a little bit wooden. Yeah, I mean, the Ahsoka character is not exactly acting the way you would expect Ahsoka to act at this point. If you really want to play a really fun, cool drinking game, every time Ahsoka crosses her arms, take a shot, you'll be smashed within the first 10 minutes of the show. Of any episode that we've seen so far, by the way. But, when we start to break it down, it obviously opens with Sabine training, and we actually finally get a name, Zatoichi, right? That's the name of that whole, blind training thing that we also see mirrored in A New Hope. So they finally gave a name to this training style, which, of course, comes from, pretty much, they spelled it a little different, but it's pronounced pretty much the same way. It's like a blind fighting style for samurais or something. So I thought that was kind of cool. I thought that opening was, interesting. And of course, Huang, he's like the MVP of the entire episode. I'll just put that out there now. I mean, he's incredible. Peter Griffin is chatting in. He says, "Whoa, this may be the only channel I've seen that isn't loving Ahsoka." Really? That's interesting. He says, besides Melvin, of course. It's kind of funny because actually, if you watch a lot of other channels, if you watch The Critical Drinker, he just rips Ahsoka to shreds. I mean, it's highly recommended viewing because, again, I don't necessarily disagree with his assessments. I think he's maybe being a little too hard on it at times, but, I mean, Campia is on board with that. Christian Harloff, I think, might maybe like it a little bit more than, we're talking about. And again, I mean, I want to stress this. There are problems with it, but I don't think either one of us, I mean, you don't dislike or hate the show, right?
No, I don't hate it, but I
Okay.
I don't hate it. No, I don't hate it. It's just um the things that are glaring are really glaring, and
Yeah, that's
that's it.
exactly.
If it, and I'll
Exactly.
put it to you this way, if it doesn't get corrected, I'm probably going to hate it.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, the other thing too was that, this show showed so much promise, at
Yeah.
least conceptually, that I think the problem is it just isn't delivering on that promise. I mean, there's a lot of problems. We brought this up in our reviews of episodes 1 and 2. There were just a lot of issues. And that's really the problem. Uh I mean, it's not I don't think it's bad. I just think that and I'll get into some of the issues that I had with these particular episodes, but even when you look at some of the initial ones, right? They have Hera, or not Hera, Sabine riding, that whole motorcycle thing, a la Top Gun, or is kind of like the whole Star Trek thing, where they got the rock song
Mhm.
thing playing. I mean, there's just a lot of things, and the biggest problem that you and I brought up before was the fact that it's being written like an animated show. Filoni needs more practice writing for live action. He just It's feeling a little bit more like an animated show. The decisions that these characters are making is really stupid. Like, one of the other things that I bring up too is, like, I mean, Hera goes in to the chancellor and a bunch of senators to talk about some investigation. It's like, this would be like a cop going to the president of the United States and saying, I want to investigate this. It's like, well, then investigate it. I mean,
Well, my that was one of my big things. So it's like the fact that Hera is a general.
yeah.
It's like, okay, you have all this evidence that shows, like, okay, Morgan Elsbeth was broken out of the secure, thing. A bunch of Jedi people wiped her out, wiped out the whole crew, basically.
Hmm.
Okay, now we find like this whole cell on this one planet used to be run by Morgan is now they have loyalists to the Empire, and okay, then they're like, no, we don't think that's a problem. Like what? Like in what universe are? I mean, I'm gonna we're in
Well,
Star Wars, but
sure.
it just doesn't make any sense at all. It's just like, okay, either you guys are completely incompetent, or I mean, to me, that's like the only explanation. Because if you're a general, like you have a certain amount of latitude
Right?
as a general.
That's my point. Why would
Like
you
you're
go to you wouldn't do this. This makes
like, just take a
no
squadron,
sense.
and then yeah, you take a squadron, and then it's
Just
like, okay, we did go there.
investigate it.
We got attacked. These people are stealing hyperdrives.
Right?
Like
The guy
there's all
said
this
for the
glaring.
Empire. It's like, okay, I think maybe, this warrants an investigation. I mean, just saying. Peter
Yeah,
Griffin says, I hated Andor, so to each their own, I guess. Again, it's not so much hating the show. Like, the show itself, there's enough, and we pointed this out too, there's enough good stuff in the show that I think it does keep us, primarily with episode 4, which of course we'll get to. First, we got to get through all the silliness and stupidness of episode 3. We'll get through that. And again, it's not like everything was bad, right? I mean, that's the thing about this show. It's not like everything is terrible about this show. You can argue that maybe a lot of things about the Book of Boba Fett were somewhat of a stretch. I mean, there was some good stuff in there too, but overall, sure. For people that hate that, I'll say okay, fine, whatever, right? But and again, we're not Star Wars apologists. We're huge fans. But look, there's problems. We're going to point them out. David says, Family Guy is keeping it real tonight. Andor was boring. It's a C- at best. Well, and again, I mean, I don't want to get off on too much of a tangent here with Andor because, this isn't an Andor review. It's an Ahsoka review. But I will say this.
Yeah, wrong A.
I just exactly. But ours goes. The thing about it is Andor is a very specific kind of a show. It's not going to appeal to every kind of a fan. It's more of a deep thinking political thriller. It's set in the Star Wars universe. There's a lot of Star Wars-ish stuff going on, but it's not the swashbuckling, action adventure kind of a thing that a lot of people would necessarily latch onto as Star Wars fans. And it doesn't land with everybody. And that's one of the reasons why we like doing a show like this. Because look, a lot of stuff is not going to land with everybody. And even if there's things that everybody likes versus things that everybody hates, even if everybody is in general agreement, like let's just say there's a series that comes out and everybody's like, yeah, this is amazing, right? You're still going to have nuances. There's still going to be certain things that people latch onto and you're like, oh, well, I never really thought of that. So in other words, even if you're in a general agreement, there's still some things that you might go, there's like discussion points basically, right? And that's kind of where, so Andor's not going to land with everybody. And I mean, the showrunners basically said that to people, like, listen, Andor's not going to land with everybody. The problem with Ahsoka is the fact that Ahsoka was designed a little bit more with the general Star Wars fans in mind, but they're continuing some of the same issues. Now, there's also some Easter egg type things that are in this too. I wanted to bring this up before I forget about it, because this is one of those like little details that I could actually easily forget. So in episode 3, you actually had, because we're talking about, Hera going in and talking to the chancellor and a bunch of the senators. One of the senators was actually Senator Sholo. And he's actually the father of Kaz Sholo, who is the main character of Star Wars Resistance. There's probably a lot of people that didn't pick up on that. I thought about it because I was one of those people that actually watched Star Wars Resistance. It was aimed a little bit more for kids or whatever, but it, being that it was aimed towards kids, it was a little bit of a, kind of a kids-oriented show, right? But there was still a lot of really good, meaty stuff that was in there. And basically going back and forth. I mean, it had some cool canonical stuff that was in there and everything, too. So for anybody that was a fan of that, that was just a cool little Easter egg, I thought anyway. Seeing Jason Syndulla, right? Because that was something that was brought up in the epilogue of the Rebels season 4.
Rebels.
Yeah. It was kind of cool to see him actually get a little bit of screen time in there and talk about maybe wanting to be a Jedi. It was kind of like a nod to Kanan without actually mentioning his name. I thought that was cool. I mean, do you think that he's going to end up being... And again, I just want to concentrate on episode 3 right now. I mean, I think what I want to do is do kind of like a linear thing. Like I want to, let's just take care of episode 3 and then we'll move into 4 versus, just bouncing all over the place. But do you see Jason Syndulla actually being a main character of this thing? Or do you think that that's something that might be saved for further down the line?
I think it should be saved for further down the line. I think it's cool that you introduce them and you kind of maybe give some background on them a little bit, but then leave it at that. I think we already have enough going on. We still got to know about Ahsoka and why the heck, you know, she wasn't around in the original trilogy. We have to still know what's up with Hera.
Mm-hmm.
Sabine, is she going to be a Jedi? Is she not? Or is she going to be using the Force? What's up with Ezra? What's up with Thrawn? I mean, we have like some big main characters that's already been established. That's why we came to this, because we want to see the continuation of these characters. So adding Jason is cool. Like, that's like you said, as a nod to Kanan, but I don't think we need to focus on him, because once again, I think that's going to detract away from the main character, who's supposed to be Ahsoka.
Yeah, and I mean, look, this is something that's already happened. I mean, arguably, when you saw episodes 1 and 2, I mean, the casual fan's going to be like, "What's going on?" I mean, is this? I thought it was called Ahsoka. Right now, I'm thinking it should be called Sabine. I mean,
Right.
it's so yeah. If you start by, you know, like all of a sudden going, "Oh, well, now we got Jason Sandula in there." I mean, the problem is you do have to keep the focus on Ahsoka. You do have to tell that story. And let's face it, even though right now we're dealing with episode 3, episode 4 was released. And look, there's only 4 more episodes left of this show, at least this season. So we do have to see some significance. We'll get into some more of this later. Another thing I thought that was cool about episode 3, I like the fact that we finally saw Sabine. She was trying to use the Force, and I honestly like the fact that she just didn't pick it up, because this is one of the problems that I had with the sequel trilogy, of course, with Rey. This is a problem I have with a lot of these, go girl power, female led, the Force is female, whatever Kathleen Kennedy's trip is. A lot of times it's like, they would teach somebody something and they would pick it up. I like the fact that Sabine was trying to use the Force and it just wasn't working for her.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about this, just the fact that that she tried to use it, and then she even made that little quip about like, oh, well, next time, like, you won this round. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
Like, I
Yeah.
like that aspect of
Mm-hmm.
it, because it just shows that, like, it's not that easy. And it's cool to actually see someone who's not naturally gifted in the Force try to use
Right.
it, versus someone we already know is like, oh, you have a propensity for this, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Because we've all thought about, like, oh man, what if I had the Force? And it's just the reality of it is like, well, we all would have it, but all of us wouldn't be able to wield it like others.
Well, the other thing
So
too, I think, Huang's one of his things that he was saying was like, look, I mean, Sabine, he even hammered this point more home during this episode than even the previous ones, that, Sabine was just like the least talented of any
mhm.
student that had ever existed in this. And I think that that was somewhat of a reinforcement of that. And I thought that that was kind of a cool thing. And,
Yeah,
you know,
I like the fact that I like the fact that Huang is just basically kind of like, because she's Mandalorian, she picks up the weapons fighting part.
yep.
Like, the weapons fighting part is like, okay, she can get better with that, because that's kind of second nature to her. That's
Yeah,
what
it's kind of
Ahsoka
a
does.
Mandalorian thing more than anything else. Exactly.
Yeah, but and that's why I even love when Sabine said, like, it's the other part, it's the whole Force thing. It's like,
Right.
that's the part I can't really get. And I like the fact that Ahsoka, she once again was just kind of like, this, every now and again, like I said, when it comes to dialogue, she'll drop some gems, which I think that was cool. And so she dropped a gem is basically like, start small. And she kind of like hinted towards like the cup, like, just she showed her using the Force, and you could see like the wonderment in Sabine, like, man, I wish I could do that. And it's like, well,
Mm-hmm.
it takes time and practice. And it's like, well, I just thought because of our situation, this will, and she's like, no, it doesn't work that way. you know
Yeah,
and
that was actually really cool. It was
Yeah,
somebody
that
actually
dialogue was
struggling.
actually.
Yeah. I mean, that's something that I think that this show is starting to do really well, is it's showing the struggle behind, using the force, and then everybody is just like picking it up and it's like second nature. Because again, you have to remember that this is long after the Jedi, right? I mean,
Hmm.
during the main time of the Jedi or whatever, like during, say, the prequel era, it would make more sense that maybe it would be second nature if people were teaching you, because you'd have all this education or whatever. But we're now in that post Return of the Jedi era where the Jedi are all but extinct, and I mean, it's not like, I mean, because if somebody just says, "Oh yeah, use the Force and bring this cup or whatever to you," it's like, well, how do you even engage that? How do you even tap
Hmm.
into that power? And I think that that's something that we're seeing with Sabine, that kind of a struggle. Um, Ted Adam Green says, I am thoroughly enjoying this series, guys, and love hearing everyone give their take on it too, even the ones who are not enjoying it as much as me. Thanks for podcasting. I have to say this though. It sounds like we're really dumping on the show, but I don't I don't necessarily think that we're not enjoying it as much. Because one of the things that we said in episodes 1 and 2, and I'm sure this is true for both of us for 3 and 4, we're enjoying it. That's the difference. The difference is that this is a very enjoyable, fun show to watch. It's just that we would be remiss if we didn't talk about the problems, because there are big problems with this show. Now, I think what's happening is that some people are able to overlook those issues and just enjoy it for what it is. And I'm sure that if I weren't doing a show, I could probably do that. But being that we're doing an actual podcast on this thing, it's almost like I feel remiss if I don't say, okay, let's look at this thing and be somewhat realistic about it. I mean, I think that that's
Yeah.
one of the things that you have to do.
Well, Ted, first of all, I want to say, man, thanks. I appreciate you, taking the time to comment, and I'm glad you're enjoying the show so far, and being a part of our community. I would just say that this is kind of like, to Eric's point, it's kind of like, in my case, it would be almost like watching my kid, if I had a kid and they were playing football. It's like I'm
hmm
enjoying watching them play because they're my kid and I enjoy it. I love them and
hmm
they're giving their efforts, and I'm waiting to see the growth in them. However, I do, as a former player, like I do see the problems that he might have. And so it's like, you want to take them aside and it's like, hey, good job today, but here's some things you can work on to be better. And that's
Right.
kind of where we are right now.
Yeah, that's exactly where we are. Um, so Dragonfly Mass says the show feels like it's moving upwards. Episode 5 feels like it could be the make or break episode. It's interesting that you bring that up, because I actually thought that it would be episode 4 that was a make or break episode.
Hmm.
And to me, it made it. But I do understand what you're saying, is that when you look at how episode 4 ends and you just look at, the show in totality, when you take the first 4 episodes, absolutely 5. And look, they're releasing it theatrically. So I honestly think that this is where we're going to start to see Thrawn. I think that the show is really going to take a leap forward when it comes to episode 5. I definitely think that, yes, you're going to see that. And again, that kind of brings me to another problem that I have with 3, is the fact that when you look at that space battle, um, that space battle was very much mirroring the space battle in A New Hope. Totally an homage to it. But it's also a great juxtaposition in good writing versus not so good writing, right? Because in the space battle part of episode 3, you don't really feel any real tension. I mean, they're kind of making jokes. I mean, their shields at one point are down to like 10%, and they're not even worried about it. If you actually go back and rewatch A New Hope and you watch that whole scene, where Luke and Han are jumping into the little turret thing or whatever, and you look at the pacing, you look at the writing, you look at the dialogue, you look at the tension, you look at everything, that's good writing, that's good pacing. The space battle scene in this, it just, I mean, it just didn't seem like the danger, like the tension or any of that was the same. You know?
Well, yeah, and I think when you realize, see, that's a couple other things, when and you're completely right that it's an homage to episode 4. But a couple of things, like one, okay, we knew what the Death Star was. We've seen it in action. Like, this thing is blowing up planets. So it's kind of like, okay, now they're trying to, of course, get out of the stupid thing and get back to their rebel base. And so, Obi-Wan is gone now. Like, you had things that were leading up to that too. That
Good
space
point.
battle where it's like,
Very good
okay,
point.
you had Obi-Wan, gave himself up to the Force, or, and we assumed Vader had killed him at first. And then, so now Luke is alone. Now it's just Luke, Leia, and Han and the droids on the Falcon. And then now they're trying to escape. You got these TIE fighters that are after them. And not only are they trying to run from them, but now they're also trying to, like, get back to the base without being followed, pretty much, not knowing that there's a whole homing beacon that's attached to the ship,
Right.
just in case.
Yep.
So, there's, and then the other part of it is the music. The John Williams, once again, the music.
Yeah, that's
brought a lot
you're
of,
right, man. That cannot be understated. That was
yeah.
another big difference between the two scenes. That's a very good point.
So those are the things that we're missing in the episode, where it's like you said, to create that tension. It's like the buildup of events where it's like, okay, the pressure is mounting. Obi-Wan's gone. We're trying to get away, and now these TIE fighters are after us. Luke is kind of inexperienced, and Han is trying to hold the ship together. And they're still trying to get to this base. So, and then the music.
But I mean, if you look at it though,
it.
and this is another reason why I look at the juxtaposition, is like they were, I mean, Shin Hati and her and Marak, I think, was on there too, and a couple other ships or whatever. They're just like just shooting the crap out of their ship. I mean, like, they should have been a little bit more, concerned. I mean, it was just, the whole scene just felt wrong, I guess, for some reason.
Well, yeah. Now, I will tell you what went right in that scene, though. So I'm giving, we ate the veggies. Let's give some dessert. One of the things that,
all right, I'm willing to listen to your dessert here. I mean,
the dessert parts for me was, I love the moment of growth. Well, the humor was fun because I thought that
the humor was cool. I mean, I will say the humor was cool. Now it's not a time
for a lesson. Like, I
misplaced, but
the fact that you changed my presets. She's like, well, I don't really need them. Like, that was actually kind of funny because it's like,
that was
hello,
funny.
Jedi Master here. Like,
yeah,
I don't really
that was
presets. So I love that part.
All right, that was cool. But I gotta admit, you're right.
The other dessert, though, and this is what this might have glossed. A lot of people might have glossed over this part. Was when, it went from Ahsoka trying to tell Sabine what to do in her own element, and then she switched gears and said, "What do you need from me?" When she decided to say, like, okay, I don't need, because one of the things that she said earlier in the end, when they were just kind of flying out there, is when Sabine was talking to Huyang, and she's like, well, I don't need her to be a Jedi. I need her to be herself.
That was cool. That, I will admit, I latched onto that.
So that moment, moment, and then
that moment
when
was
that
cool.
You have it had verification, or it was really it came to fruition. That's the one I want to use. When Ahsoka realizes, like, okay, I can't talk to her like she's a traditional Padawan, because she's not. I have to let her be. And she's like, okay, you're a Mandalorian, you're a weapons expert. This is kind of what you do. So what do you need me to do to help you? And then she's like, okay, well, then they start working as a team, and then they started getting things accomplished. So that, to me, that was a dessert.
And that does plant the seed to what we end up seeing in episode 4, because that's one of the
Right.
things in episode 4 that we'll get to obviously, but that's something that you see basically continuing. So you can actually look at it like, okay, they planted their seeds here.
Hmm.
Ted Adam Green says, "Oh, I wasn't even talking about y'all. I was referring to the ones who aren't enjoying it at all. Y'all good and just providing a good critique." Well, we definitely
I
appreciate that, because
appreciate
look,
you.
yeah, we try to be balanced with this stuff, right? Because we are fans, and the thing that is a little bit strange is that there are some times where, and I think both of us are conscious of this, right? Where you have to look at it a little bit differently when you're doing a show versus when you're just, I mean, again, this is basically a little community that we have where we're all just getting together and talking about Star Wars. I mean, we're not trying to really be like pundits or something like that, but you do have somewhat of a responsibility when you put yourself out there on YouTube and just say, okay, we're gonna critique or review or break this stuff down. I mean, you do have to look at it a little bit differently than you would if you were just consuming this as a pure fan. It's sort of like a service that we're providing in a way, but it's also, I think, a really good um, platform in order to spawn a bunch of discussion, like what we're doing right now. Ronaldo says, definitely the best episode, especially 4. Yeah, and we'll get to it, but yes, I would agree that 4. I agree with a lot of the people that are saying that 5 is probably going to be that episode, but I think 4 is definitely where this is starting to turn a little bit into something that's a little bit better. Dragonfly Mass says, I think Shin's ego had her firing directly at Ahsoka. Well, that's a very Sith-like thing that's going on here, right? Is that she's reacting very much as a dark side user would. And I did think it was hilarious that, she sort of fails, and then Morgan's like, all right, you're stupid. Let me take care of this. Well, then she fails, and then Shin goes back and is like, okay, well, now I'm going to, now you failed, and now I'm going to take care of this. So I thought that was kind of cool, too. I thought that there was some really, really interesting moments there. And speaking of Shin, it was funny. I don't know if you picked up on this at all or not, but her starfighter that she was using almost seemed to me like it was like some retrofitted Naboo fighter.
Yeah, it definitely did. One of the things I had a problem with,
or just like dumping on this show. It's great.
I know.
Well, I got one. I got one after you. So
all right,
we'll see what you bring, and then I got another one that I thought was just dumb.
So okay, Ahsoka, one, she got into the spacesuit like super quick.
That was the one. So. Okay, so first of all, I think that whole spacesuit thing was dumb. Like, really? Where did she get? I mean, all right.
I mean, that's fine. You could have one on the ship. I get it, but the fact that she got into,
I don't know, man. It was just
so
kind of
was just,
yeah.
But here's the part that bothered me when she goes out into the wing, and I get the fact that she's like, okay, I'm going to try to draw their attention. It's like, okay. The fact that, okay, you're shooting these blast bolts from a ship's cannon. It's not a blaster.
Right.
It's a ship's cannon. That would be like, oh, okay, I'm going to, versus getting shot at with a gun like a 9mm versus, oh no, I have this huge 50 cal, round.
Yeah, like a howitzer or something,
Yeah, exactly. Like, okay, that's 2 completely different rounds of ammunition here. So this is like the fact that she's able to block this with a lightsaber and not be like knocked back or anything. It's just I get it. It's sci-fi fantasy.
I mean, I get it, but no, fantasy, I thought the same thing. But I will say this though, I did think it was cool when she did that flip and then cut the ship in half or whatever.
Yeah.
That was sweet. I mean, it was almost like, you know what? You kind of pulled me back a little bit with that one.
Yeah, it's kind of like that Rey move she did in Rise of Skywalker with
It is,
Kylo.
but see, to me, Ahsoka earned that. Rey did not.
True.
You know, that was one of the things that I noticed immediately is like, look, Ahsoka, I could see her being that powerful. Rey, I mean, I just think that it's like, all right, you learned this like 10 minutes ago. Why are you able to do all this stuff? And again, I mean, I think a lot of what we're seeing, a lot of the dialogue, a lot of the performances, a lot of the different things, it's very much written like a cartoon. I'm just gonna say it. I mean, it's like this is an animated show performed in live action. That's the problem. I think a lot of the problems that we're having with this show are because of that. Let's see what we got. We got a couple more chats in here. Ronaldo says, I think the spacesuit is cool. And I also have a problem with lightsabers deflecting those cannons. That's good. See, everybody's on board. I like this. Dragonfly Mass says, you could thank video games for that. It's a good point, actually. We've seen lightsabers deflect turbo lasers and blaster cannons. And this is, you know, you're not wrong.
Valid point. No,
I mean, I think you're right. I think on one hand, so it's almost like they're overcorrecting, right? Because one of the problems that we had with the earlier films, and again, you know, the original trilogy, look, it's gold, it's a standard. You can't really say anything about it, but there are a lot of times where we were watching the original trilogy or especially the prequels, and you're like, okay, why didn't the Jedi just do X or Y or whatever, right? Because the problem that you have when you're writing this stuff is that when you create these characters that have this immense power, it's like, well, why aren't they using the power all the time? I'll give you a good example. And I'm not going to bring up the fish in The Phantom Menace like I usually do. But I'll bring up another one I bring up a lot. The Rancor. You know, Luke Skywalker is like this all-powerful Jedi at this point, right? And he's up there, like, using a bone or something to hold the thing's mouth open. It's like, dude, force choke it. Use the force to explode its heart or something. See, it's like when you have all this power, it's like your mind starts to go, well, why aren't you using it? Well, here's what's happening. And Dragonfly Mask, I think, has the right answer to this. It's like, okay, well, now we have the video games, right? Where you got like Starkiller bringing down Star Destroyers and stuff with the Force. Well, now they're overcorrecting. So now it's like these guys could do all this incredible stuff, and you're going, you know, I don't know. Ronaldo says, I also wondering why nobody shot any other part of the ship. Just the exact point that Ahsoka was. I mean, you know, that's the thing. And look, there's other criticisms that I have too, right? Like when they landed in that forest, why didn't they just napalm the forest? It's like, oh, we're gonna like send all these. It's like, look, they had like no shields left. Just blow them up.
Well, they had no idea where they were. They probably would have.
Even then, it's like, you know, they're in the forest, and obviously they were looking for them. So just blow up the forest. They had the firepower to blow up the forest. The Empire has no problems decimating. Look at what they did to Jeddah, just to prove a point. You know, I mean, it's like, it's just they're doing these things. It's like plot armor. That's what they call it, right? So it's things that they do in order to protect the storyline or whatever. But it's just glaring. David says, she should have stayed on the ship. It was stupid. Yeah, the whole thing was stupid. Ronaldo says, the biggest example of that is the Jedi super speed, which was used literally once in 9 films. Exactly. That's another one. Like, how many times could that Jedi super speed have come in handy? And they used it one time. Dragonfly Mask says, as much as I like the games and novels, they don't have the same ceiling as the movies, and it creates huge inconsistencies in the power of the Jedi. Yes. That's the problem. And you're right. It's because of the different medium, right? Like in a book or in a comic or something like that, you can get away with things. And the same thing applies with animated shows. And this is the danger of when you have somebody who's super experienced with animation, not so much with live action, and you try to write for live action, but you're doing it kind of like an animation thing, it just falls apart. And then, of course, we had the Purgle, right? The space whales. I mean, you knew that was coming. I mean,
Right.
it's only a matter of time before Filoni was going to bring in his beloved space whales. And then, of course, at the very end, last scene, you had Balin there. He's another one of those guys, like Huang, right? Steals a show. He's just the guy that it's like between Huang and Balin, those are the two guys that I think are probably the MVPs of this entire series so far.
So far, yeah. Well, that's because, Balin is kind of like Dooku. That's exactly who he reminds me
Yeah,
of.
you know what? That's a good point, man. He actually is like a lot
He's a lot,
Dooku.
like
A lot.
even the look. Yeah, the look of him, the way he talks, how calm he is. He just has that regal, disposition about himself. Then he has a female apprentice, almost like how Dooku did with Asajj Ventress.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. Good point. All right, so we move into episode 4 now. So episode 4 is, I think it was better. I mean, sure, it had some problems. I'm sure we're going to get into them. One of the things that we initially see is when Balin's talking about Ahsoka and, just the whole thing. I love the fact that, when Morgan was kind of like, oh, you're afraid, and he's not afraid, but experienced. I mean, just everything about the Balin character is right to me.
Yeah. Yeah, Balin definitely has that that cool, calm, collected vibe about him, but he also is wise. Like, he's not just rushing in to do stuff. He's calculated. He's very methodical. And he has a healthy respect and reverence. He understands, like, okay, I know who Ahsoka is. Like, she's the Padawan of probably one of the greatest Jedi of all time.
Yep.
And Anakin Skywalker. And then he eventually became one of the greatest Sith Lords of all time, which he knows that too. So it's like,
yeah, I have to say,
Ahsoka is not to be slept on.
Exactly.
We can't just, and the fact that she survived Order 66 further proves that, like, okay, she's not just some regular, Kanan Jarrus or something. Like, no, she's Ahsoka Tano, the heir apparent to Anakin Skywalker.
Well, and again, I mean, this is jumping ahead a little bit, but I mean, when they're about to duel and they had that whole little conversation, there's so many nuggets in there. There's a couple things that pop out at me right away. I was going to bring this up a little bit later in this show, but we're here now. We're talking about it right now, so we might as well just talk about it. There were two things that popped up during the conversation before they actually started dueling that I thought was cool. One was when he did bring up Anakin and then said, what he had very few people had lived to see what he had become or whatever. It was almost like a little nod to the Vader thing, It was kind of like Balin knew who Vader was. And there's so few people that know who Vader is or was. And it begs the question. I mean, when you're listening to this whole dialogue, it's like, well, who is this guy? I mean, who is this Balin? Skull or whatever, yeah.
Skull,
yeah.
That's
Skoll, yeah. I mean, it's like, who is this guy? Because, he just, there's a lot of stuff that he knows. There's a lot of things that he's dialed into that you have to wonder, well, who is he? And I really hope that in future episodes, and again, we only have like 4 left, right? But I really hope we get a little bit of sense. And especially because the actor passed away, I mean, this is probably it for him. So I really hope that they explore a little bit on who he was. And then, of course, another thing that I was going to bring up toward the end as well was when you factor in also that this guy could actually go toe to toe with Ahsoka. You know,
Mm-hmm.
he essentially kind of beat her in a way. I mean, kind of in that way that Palpatine beat, Mace in a sense. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
she ended up falling off of the platform or whatever. But I mean, I like the fact that Ahsoka just didn't win, you know? But it does beg the question, though, well, who is this guy? Because, like, I mean, Ahsoka was going toe to toe with, like, Darth Maul. It's like, I mean, she's
Yeah.
beating, like, she went against Vader. And granted,
Yep.
she didn't win, but she didn't lose. So
Yeah.
who's this Balin guy? Who is he?
Well, I think because Balin is, um, he's an older guy, as we can tell. So he's been around for a while. And, he's probably had some tutelage under some of the best too. We don't know who his former masters were in regards to when he was a Jedi. So I'm sure he probably trained under Yoda, as most younglings did at some point. Yeah, Yoda usually had a thing with the younglings. Pause. That sounds weird, but
Yeah. You just should not put it like
I
that, man.
know,
Great
I know.
relations he had with the Wookiees.
With
I
the
mean,
Wookiee,
Yoda was a player, just putting it out there.
well, he was picking on people his own size. But the thing is that like now he had, probably, and it seems like Dooku might have even trained him at some point. Like he might have been old enough to be around, because he looks like he would have been around the time of Dooku, Qui-Gon, that era.
Yeah.
So I could see him, and that's when swordsmen were really like a thing at that time. Like, so I mean, he's pretty powerful, and he doesn't seem um like filled with anger like so much like Shin.
Well,
Like
that's what I
Shin
was gonna
has
say.
like Shin definitely has that.
Yeah, she's
I'm
got
trying to
more of the
prove
dark
myself,
side. Yeah, but
and he's more like I'm cool, calm, collected. Like I don't have anything to prove. I know who I am.
it's
Type
not
thing.
even that. I don't think that he's really a villain in the true sense of the word. He's one of those guys
No,
that I think he
he
really
just wants
feels
to be on
like
the winning side
maybe, but I honestly
because that's what
think
he
that,
said. I mean, really.
well, kind of, but I mean, he also was basically thinking like he thinks that the ideology, whatever it is that he believes in, is the best for the galaxy. I think that he thinks that in a way he's the hero of his own story, as many people tend to be, but he's just not a villain in the true sense of the word. And it just makes me wonder because, sure, I mean, we see a lot of the things. Okay, he probably trained under Yoda. He probably did a lot of the stuff, but it just, I mean, he brought it up himself. Like, look, everybody knows who Anakin was, and I don't know. There's just like a lot of clues that they're dropping that it just makes me wonder. Like, is there more to this guy? Because look, he survived Order 66 too. We don't know when he joined up or hooked up with the Empire. I mean,
Yeah.
okay, so let me get a couple of these things. David has a couple of chats. He says, how do you think about the music in this episode?
And 4 wasn't memorable.
Yeah, I mean, I don't.
Nothing about the music, and how I know is because I don't remember it.
Well, yeah, but I mean, and I guess it just depends. It depends on how you really are looking at this. I would agree. I don't necessarily think it's memorable. We're not talking John Williams level music here. But I will say that I think that the music that they had added to the visuals, so it did its job. I actually thought the music in episode 3 was pretty good.
Mhm.
And episode 4, this actually had a lot of really cool, because one of the other things that I wanted to point out too was when they kept looking out into the forest, when they were trying to fix the ship and do all that stuff, and there was a really big sense of dread that I felt when they were doing that. Like, I actually felt like I was put in their position. That was one of the reasons why I thought episode 4 was really good too, is the fact that I really felt, unlike before, this is the first episode of Ahsoka where I really felt that sense of tension, that sense of dread, where I felt like I was being put in the same position as the characters. And I think the music definitely added to that. I don't necessarily think it's like, Emmy award winning or anything like that, but I think it was good. David goes on to say, he was picking people on his own size. He was laughing about that. Ronaldo goes on to say, I love that Balin and Shin's robes look like medieval armor instead of traditional samurai style.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
like that too.
Yeah. They they did really well. And again, another thing that, since we're more or less going on that path too, I think that the lightsaber duels were taken up a notch in this episode.
Yeah, definitely. I think, and before I even get to the lightsaber duels, I love the tension. Like, to me, the best tension in the part where I felt like you said the dread was
Mm-hmm.
when that droid was attacking Huang, and Huang
Yes.
kind of had to like
Yes. Then he
defend himself, and
shorted his
it's like,
ship out or whatever to alert them that there was an
yeah,
issue. Yeah, that's what I'm talking
yeah,
about.
like,
Exactly.
to me that was good writing. That was like,
Yeah, it was really
okay,
good pacing
you
and everything.
know, pacing, it built the tension, and then when they came out there, it was just like, oh, okay, we have action out here that we need to take care of. um I like the whole conversation that Sabine and um Ahsoka had when she's like, when the time comes, can I trust you?
Yep.
And it was just like, when she had that whole conversation about that, and then how Huang basically kept telling them, like, try to stick together. You guys work better that way when
Well,
you guys are
that was
together.
another thing I was going to bring up too, because that ended up being kind of a joke, right? Where he's basically saying this whole, like, he's reaching out, saying, "Look, you guys, you work better together," and then Ahsoka's like, "All right, well, we'll go," and then Sabine's like, together and everything. It was just, that was
Yeah.
very, very Star Wars, the way that they delivered that, and it was kind of funny. It was,
Yeah.
it basically added a little bit of levity in what otherwise would have been maybe somewhat of a tense moment. And so again, and that's good writing, that's good pacing. That's a lot of things that I think that people, these are the subtleties that I think people tend to overlook.
Yeah, these are
Um
the treats that I'm
yeah,
often
for
kind of
good
like
or
trying to
bad.
speak of. Yeah.
Because people tend to
But then
overlook poor writing too.
yeah. But then we get to the lightsaber duels, and it's like, okay, we get to the point where like it's Ahsoka versus Maruk, and you got um Shin and Sabine, part two.
Mhm.
And well, actually it's part two for both of them, technically. But I love watching, and the fact that they weren't completely separate, they were just kind of like maybe within 50 feet from each other, having their own personal duels with, their respective opponents. And Sabine fared barely well. You could tell, like, okay, her training is starting to come back, because now she's faring a whole lot better than she did before, where she was
Oh
like
yeah.
falling over the place and lunging and just doing a bunch
Yeah.
of amateurish type stuff. Now she's a little bit more controlled. She's more confident. She still kind of got her butt handed to her, but not as bad now. It's kind of like the Lions,
Yeah.
steadily getting better.
Steadily getting better. And exactly. And of course, with Marak, one of the things that we see is that when he ends up losing, he ended up being some reincarnated soul or something.
No, he's a night brother.
Well, yeah, but basically the Night Sisters would like reanimate um
Yeah,
some soul, and and that's
yeah,
why when he
exactly.
was cut, he just flew out. So
All
that
that
was,
green smoke.
yeah. And that was a nice nod to a little bit of the expanded universe thing and a little bit of the Clone Wars thing, and again, it's just further evidence that, you know, I still laugh when people would make comments like, "Oh, yeah, no, you could just watch this never having watched any of this stuff and you'll be fine." It's like, "No, you won't be fine." You know,
Yeah.
you'll be completely confused. You'll be barely hanging on. You know, I mean,
Yeah, exactly.
it just there's no way in the world that if you didn't see the Clone Wars and Rebels that you wouldn't be lost in this show. I'm sorry. That's just kind of the way it is, unfortunately.
One of the things about that duel between Ahsoka and Maruk that I thought was like, I was like, okay, here's another nod, is that whole Obi-Wan Maul situation when they met back up again and they fought, and basically, they were in this pose for like the longest time, and then Maruk made that one move, and Ahsoka just came in with the swift move. It's like, it's over with.
Hmm.
That was totally like another reincarnation of that Obi-Wan and Darth Maul scene at the end of Rebels.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I mean, to that end, now Ronaldo here is going back to our Balin conversation, but he basically says he really believes he's a good guy. Ahsoka is evil for him. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I would say that he feels that Ahsoka is evil. I think he thinks that Ahsoka's misguided.
Misguided.
Yeah. Ronaldo goes on to say the lightsaber fights in 4 are the best we've seen on TV. I would actually probably agree with that, actually, that this is probably the best that we've seen in the Disney Plus shows.
Oh no, that Vader Obi-Wan was good.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, I think that a lot of people expected. I mean, the second duel that they had, of course, that was up there. But I
Like their
think,
their final one.
yeah,
Yeah.
their final one, that was cool. But I think a lot of it too suffered from is obviously a volume thing, and this. It was kind of funny because when they were dueling in the Force, it really reminded me of the Force Awakens in that sense.
Yeah.
There was a little bit of a vibe to that one. Ronaldo goes on to say the writing was so much better. I would agree to that too. Dragonfly Mass says the Marak fight is so classic. Engage, reset, final blow. By the third engage, they each knew everything about their respective fighting styles. Yeah, and I mean, this is one of those things where I think that they're paying a little bit more attention to the details in this stuff, and they're trying to give us something a little bit more meaningful. And again, I mean, it's tough to make lightsaber duels super engaging, right? Because they're a little bit, I mean, I hate to actually use this phrase, but they're kind of passe in a sense. I mean, it's kind of like been there, done that. And to try to come up with new ways to make them exciting for newer generations, it's kind of tough. Ronaldo says, at the end, Barack was a dude. But you know what he wasn't? He wasn't Ezra like a lot of people thought he was going to be.
Oh yeah, I remember hearing
Remember
a lot of
that?
people.
Remember that? That was like
Yeah.
a big thing that everybody was like analyzing and stuff. Dragonfly Mass says Red Heron like I thought. Also maybe a Night Sister zombie. Yeah, I mean, and then Ronaldo follows up. Just kidding. He's clearly somebody important for Shin. I don't think they'll have the guts to make him Ezra. Yeah, I mean, basically, again, he's kind of like a reanimated soul. That was a little bit of a nod to the Clone Wars and somewhat with Rebels as well. Now David comes in and says, despite being old, Rey fought well because he can act. Ahsoka looks like she didn't train in real life. The robot fight was actually entertaining. Writing isn't better. Andor's writing was better. David, are you actually complimenting Andor? I mean, did I just see that? Something positive about Andor. You might have to give me a minute on this. So let's see. He says says if this is the best lightsaber battle on TV, that's a shame. Rey's fight scenes are the only ones that are okay. Well, I mean, again, if you're talking about the sequel trilogy, dude, you're talking about like budgetary concerns here. I mean, You have to remember that on a film set, they're training for like months and practicing and all these things. And the other thing that you have to look at too, and I know you and I both go back and forth on this a lot, is we also talk about the emotional weight of a lot of these duels. That in a lot of
Hmm.
cases, as fancy and as flashy as the duels were in the prequel trilogy, a lot of times we'll give the nod to the ones in the original trilogy, not because it's like visually better, but because there's more emotional weight to them and it lends itself.
Hmm.
Let's see, we got want to get everybody in here before we move on here. Dragonfly Mass is another Andor positives. They made Ricotta Cannon. Yeah, I'd noticed that too. And another thing that I want to bring up too was, and this sort of ties into some of the things that they're bringing into canon again. They actually brought up Hera's Phoenix Squadron, which was something, of course, they
Hmm.
had in Rebels, and they're carrying this over. And I thought that was actually really cool that they were doing. So I like the
Yeah.
fact that they're tying in a lot of these things that you're seeing either in the animated shows and novels and stuff like that. It's the one thing that I will say that I think Disney is doing correctly is they are bringing in, into one cohesive. Maybe the continuity gets a little bit bumpy at times, but I do think that they're. Now let me ask you this, because I've been reading about this. When you see Jason Sandula and Hera, like they're about to fly off, right?
Hmm.
There's a lot of people that say that they saw a photo or something of Kanan on the controls. Did you catch that at all?
No, I didn't. But
I didn't either.
what I did catch is why in the world would you take your son to a battle?
I don't know. I mean, and I also had to
That's what I'm just
say,
just saying.
and the other thing too is that, I mean, it shouldn't have bothered me, I guess, but when he started saying, "Oh, I have a bad feeling," I'm like, "Ah, dude, are they doing the
Yeah.
whole I got a bad feeling about this thing in
Yes.
this?"
Yes,
It's
they
like,
are. Yes, they are. Yes, that was like, oh my God, really?
it's like, I mean, I get it, but I
And the
don't
fact
know.
that, he is a son of a Jedi, so it's like,
I
okay.
know, but still, it
I
just,
know.
yeah, it bothered me. Davidson Andor had way more potential than Ahsoka. I would agree with that, actually. The cast of Andor could act their butts off. Andor had movie magic moments that sent chills down your spine. Ahsoka hasn't had anything like that. What have you done with the real David? I mean, I'm seeing all this positive, and yet you'll say that, but you say that you hate Andor. Ooh, a blast from the past. Connor, having just watched the episode,
Ah,
I did not see it.
I think he's
Okay.
talking about the picture.
Yeah, he's talking about the picture. That was the thing too. I did not see it. I went back and I looked for it. As soon as I read about that, I went back and I actually looked for it. I tried to see, if I could see it, because they're like, "Oh, it's all blurry or whatever." I'm looking at it. I'm like, "Yeah, I got nothing, man. I'm sorry." Um, Ronaldo says, "I noticed that, but kids always get involved where they shouldn't, so I'm kind of used to it." They get involved where they shouldn't, but it's not the parents that are bringing them along, though. See, that's
Yeah,
where I
it's
think
like,
we had the problem. It's like if he had stowed away and he kind of did like a little like Obi-Wan did to Padme or something like that, I could see that.
or how Omega is always trying to,
Yeah, yeah,
do stuff with the Bad Batch. Or
right.
my thing is like if they were just doing like a regular mission or whatever, and they got caught up in something, and they just I'm like, okay, well, you're here, but like you're intentionally going into a battle situation. You brought your squadron with you. You got everybody checking in. Everybody's locking X4s and attack positions. Like your kid is sitting right there. Like, would you really take that risk?
Maybe the daycare was full. Maybe they just couldn't get, a sitter that
I
night.
know.
I don't know. I mean, but Dragonfly Mask has put a good point. He says, Star Wars has child soldiers, which is one of the darker themes. I guess I can go along with that. I can hang with that. I mean, it's a different world, right? Another thing that I thought was
Where
cool,
you come?
the
Sorry.
whole tension, and this is one of the things I really liked about episode 4 over episode 3. Like I said, with episode 3, there wasn't really any tension or whatever. I felt a lot of tension in episode 4. I felt the tension when you were waiting for those guards to pop out of the forest. I also felt the tension when they were counting down the whole, okay, the hyperdrive in the Eye of Sion was getting ready to fire off, and they're, about to launch, and it was almost like the Death Star will be in range, and whatever. I mean, it was there was actual tension there, which I thought was pretty cool, actually. And you didn't see that in a lot of the previous episodes.
And I also like the fact that we saw them lose. Like, okay, we finally got a moment where our heroes lose.
Yeah.
This battle.
Right.
They lost the thing. They lost the little Cheerio Scion, and they lost, the Ahsoka gave up, not Ahsoka, but Sabine gave up the little star map thing.
Which, by the way, did you catch the fact there was a force power being used on that? I confirmed that because I went and read it. It was like force empathy or something like that. I went back to see because I thought it was really weird. I mean, granted, yeah, he was a smooth talker, all this other stuff, but I'm like, I don't know, man. I'm thinking there's something more at work here, and it was confirmed that it was force empathy that was being used. So yes, I thought that was really cool too.
And then of course we get to see Ahsoka being basically knocked out of this world into the world between worlds.
Mm-hmm.
So, and we, get the appearance of Hayden Christensen finally as Anakin Skywalker, although he's missing the scar over his eye, but
Well, I mean, he's supposed to be a
who wants
force
to
ghost
nitpick?
at this point, I think that's why.
It's like,
I mean, that's kind of and we'll see how that goes. But I agree with you. I like the fact that Ahsoka lost. I mean, first of all, I thought that duel between her and Balin was really cool. I thought that was really worth the price of admission for this whole episode. But I also, like you said, I like the fact that she lost, I mean, and then Sabine, I mean, granted, there was this force power being used on her, but even if it wasn't, you can almost understand her decision because as far as she's concerned, she thinks her master's dead. And it's kind of like, well, all right, at least maybe I can reunite with Ezra. I mean, I'll get something out of the deal, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought that was really cool. I liked how they juxtaposed that too, where you had Wang, he was sort of alone in the forest and he was calling out for them. And, it was just like you really felt the loneliness and the isolation.
Yeah.
And so you're getting all these different scenes together. And of course, I have to give a shout out to that duel between Ahsoka and Balin. I mean, first you had that little dialogue in the beginning, which I thought was really nice. The duel I thought was good. It showed how powerful he was. I caught that when he would, he was like swinging. There was a point where his like eyes or something went yellow or whatever, and then he was able to overpower her a little bit. And then, he had thrown that rock or something at her, and she just like flipped and cut it in half. I mean, there was some really exciting parts to that, I thought.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I mean the lightsaber duel was cool. I mean, some things were a little cheesy, like the whole shot when she put her leg up on that rock and was like doing that weird like ballet thing. I was like, okay, come on now.
Well, yeah, it was like a show off kind of thing.
Yeah, but I get it though. They're just trying to add some color and flavor, so I'll allow it. But but yeah, I mean, overall, it was one of the better duels, and you could tell Balin was kind of getting under Ahsoka's skin a little bit. with some
Mm-hmm.
things, especially talking about Anakin and how she's like, "Oh, I'm not living in the past," and it's like, well, so overall, I think 4 was I think that was the better episode out of all of them. If we're
Yeah,
about all being
I would
honest.
100% agree. I think 4 was definitely the best episode. David,
That's
of
fine.
course, wants to go on and clarify his Andor position. He says, I don't hate Andor. It's just so slow and boring. Andor was a missed opportunity. It had a lot of sporadic great moments. Also, she's a perfect single mom who could do no wrong. Dragonfly Mask says, poor Rodian characters can't catch a break. Yeah, I know, man. I mean, when that thing went to like hyperspace and then, it started throwing X-Wings into each other and stuff like that. I mean, it
Yep.
actually kind of gave me some Last Jedi vibes with the strength at which it went into hyperspace. And then Ronaldo actually brings up a good question, which we could probably like start to wrap up the show on. He says, do you think Anakin saved her?
Mhm.
And while you're contemplating that, David said the scene with Anakin is going to be mediocre at best. Or she got to be the buzzkill, David. It's undeserved and cheap because the show is so bad thus far. I bet Thrawn won't show up until second to last episode. I want to hold on to that because I do want to ask everybody that's watching right now that you guys could all do this right now. Besides, if anybody out there hasn't hit that like button yet, now is the time. So hit the like button. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't yet subscribed to us. But the other thing I want you to do, anybody watching right now, live, chat in which episode do you think Thrawn's going to show up? That's a good, legitimate question. So let's go back to Ronaldo's question. Do you think Anakin saved her? Because here's a question.
It's a possibility, but I
Well,
think
because she went over the side of, or the edge or whatever this little disc-like platform is. How did she end up in the world between worlds?
and that's what I'm. If that's the case, I think it's cheap. I would agree with David that said that would be cheap to me.
But that's because I don't think that's what happened. And I'll tell you why
Right.
I don't think that Anakin saved her. Because, well, okay, I'm going to play my own devil's advocate. I'm going to be very schizophrenic here. My apologies to anybody with mental illnesses. This is 2023. You got to
Yeah.
say this stuff, right?
You have to apologize ahead of time, right?
Yeah, right. All those that are participating in cancel culture, I do not mean anything against people with mental illnesses, but at the same time, I'm going to display some schizophrenic tendencies here. My thing is, Anakin did say, I didn't expect to see you. So it was almost like Anakin was almost surprised to see her in a way.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if he saved her, but I mean, I guess you could make the argument that, oh, he saved her and was like, I'm kind of surprised you're here. I don't know. Because it is weird, because the question's going to become, how did she get there?
Exactly.
You fell off of like some platform, essentially. How did that wind you in the world between worlds?
Or is she even really there?
Yeah, well,
Maybe she clonked her head and kind of just thought about it, It's like she's having some weird dream or something. That's what I'm saying. Like she could just be dreaming. That's what she's there, but she's not really there.
Oh man, I hope not. I hope that's it. First of all, I am surprised that they brought the world between worlds this early in the show. I expected it to be in the show, being that this is technically kind of like Rebel Season 5. But I thought the world between worlds is going to appear in like, I don't know, like episode 7 or something. Because there's like 8 episodes in this show, right? Isn't the series like 8 episodes? So I thought it was going to be like maybe the second to last. I didn't expect it to show up this early. But I don't know. We'll see. All right. So there's some chats. Dragonfly Mass says episode 5. Dave Filoni should direct the episode that Thrawn and Ezra showed up. Okay. I agree. In fact, I'll even go a little step further, because one of the other things that we like to do on this show is Daryl and I will say to each other, and of course we'll invite you guys to chip in or chime in as well, what do you want to see in episode 5? And my answer to that is I want to see a little bit more of this whole little Anakin Ahsoka World Between Worlds thing, and I want to see Thrawn. And I honestly believe that once the announcement came that episode 5, which is the next episode, is going to be in a limited theatrical release, they're not going to do that without bringing Thrawn in, I don't think. I mean, if they're putting this episode in theaters, it means it's like some special thing, right? So I think that this might be where we're getting Thrawn.
Okay, so let me ask this question then. Do you think you're getting Thrawn majority of the episode or at the very end like we got Anakin, though?
Well, I would like to split the difference, if I might, and say that we're going to get them like halfway through, because they're going, they did the whole hyperspace thing, so they're going to where Thrawn is. I mean, granted, I guess I could do like some sort of interim, because I mean, if you think about it, most of episode 3 of the show was Ahsoka and Sabine and Huang just like flying in hyperspace on their way to that destination. So you could do something like that, but I think that it's going to appear like in the middle of the episode or something. Ronaldo says, I think he'll be in episode 6. It'll be a true Game of Thrawn.
No. Ronaldo.
Why'd you have to do that, Ronaldo?
Oh, good
Ronaldo,
one, but
it was good, but it was also a little physically painful, I got to admit. All right, he says, Ronaldo goes on to say, when Anakin said that, I thought it was because she died. He says, I just want to see the conversation between Anakin and Ahsoka. Well, yeah, I mean, look, I think we all do. I mean, you can't just open that can of worms and let that go for an episode or two. It's like, okay, if you're going to bring up the World Between Worlds and you're going to put Anakin in there, we need to see that next episode. We need to see a little bit more, because you have to remember, this is something a lot of people forget. This is the post-Darth Vader period. This is like after Return of the Jedi. So you remember when we all saw like Anakin all kumbaya and holding hands with Obi-Wan and Yoda staring at Luke and, his little whatever. Okay, this is after that. So Anakin is back to being himself. Now, I don't really know. People are like, oh, is he like a Force ghost or something? I'm not sure. Because the World Between Worlds is kind of like a multiverse kind of thing, right? It's like these alternate little things that happen. And a Force ghost is kind of its own thing. And a lot of people are like, well, this is where the Force ghosts live, is in the World Between Worlds. I mean, I'm not sure. And to be honest, it's been a minute since I've seen Rebels. I don't remember if they dealt with that or not. Maybe they did. Do you remember?
I can't say the World Between Worlds is necessarily where Force ghosts live. I just think that it is definitely like a multiverse. It's definitely a space where you can interact with different timelines within the Star Wars universe, such as when we saw Ezra got out of that battle with Vader. And that's how she survived the battle, was because Ezra pulled her.
Yeah.
But as far as like I said, to me, I think it's going to be more like almost like a forced dream or something like that. Like she fell, she got knocked unconscious, and the Force is showing her like Anakin and rationalize it. It's like in the World Between Worlds.
I don't know, man. I hope not. Well, we'll see. Ronaldo says Thrawn appears in next episodes. He'll be there from the beginning. Possibly. David says, Thrawn will appear at the end of episode 6. And then Connor actually has some interesting stuff. Kind of goes along with what you said, actually. Says also, my running theory is that Marok was actually the 8th brother and he was resurrected by Night Sister magic. And of course, it goes on to say, sorry to derail there. It's not a derailment at all. I mean, that's one of the things that's cool about this show, actually, is that, the topic of our show is more or less a suggestion. I mean, really, we can go into, it's like a guideline more than anything else. I mean, we can go in any direction you guys want, honestly. I mean, we're just all talking about Star Wars here. And then, of course...
And we can dig it.
Exactly. Connor goes on to say, or he is Star Killer since the voice actor was listed as a special guest. I had read about that, and I had wondered that myself. In fact, I thought that was what was going to be, was that maybe he was going to end up being Star Killer. I mean, they wrapped up the Marok storyline a little bit too neatly. Now, granted, it has its roots in, like the King Arthur times or something, and it was like a witch or something. I forgot what it was. It was named Morgan, too, by the way. Created. I mean, it was like, there's a little bit of mythology involved. It escapes me now. I mean, it's like after midnight, so my brain's not functioning as it would if it were 8 o'clock still, right? But it's something like that. And so they did lift that a little bit. Now, we don't know really what's going to happen later on in this whole series. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens, I think. Because, again, there's 4 episodes left. So I am going to lean towards Thrawn showing up in the next episode because of the theatrical release. I think maybe we might wrap up this Anakin Ahsoka storyline. At least that's what I hope. What about you?
I think primarily the episode is going to focus on Thrawn, and it's going to be like a big back and forth between Thrawn and Ahsoka in the World Between Worlds. I think we're going to get a lot of answers in that, as far as things that we've always wanted to know about Ahsoka up until this point. Mm-hmm. And then I think we're going to see Thrawn's debut. And then we're going to finally see, like, okay, like, of course, because Sabine is with Elsbeth and Balin on the ship, on the little Cheerio, headed to Thrawn. So I think...
Well, it would make sense for it to all come together at that point, right? I mean,
yeah,
they reach Thrawn, we see Thrawn. Maybe Sabine's some of the stuff from the trailer finally pops up. Because honestly, usually with trailers, they don't go beyond like the first couple of episodes. I remember even making this statement like before Ahsoka premiered. I'm like, well, with the trailer, most of the scenes are coming from like episodes 1 and 2, and you might get like a little smattering of episode 3 in there. But we saw a lot of Thrawn stuff, and we have yet to see him, and we're on episode 4, about to hit 5. So, Connor says, also, Ahsoka takes place during the same time skip during the last few episodes of Rebels. If that helps, you put the pieces together. And yeah, that's the thing. In fact, they've actually sort of retconned some of that. They actually took some of that epilogue of Rebels, where they did show that post episode 6 thing, post Return of the Jedi stuff, and they turned that around a little bit. So it'll be really interesting to see, I think, where they go from here.
Yeah, the runtime is going to be 49 minutes.
Of the next episode?
Yep, next episode is going to be 49 minutes.
They actually posted that, huh?
Mm-hmm. It's actually been confirmed.
All right. Well, I mean, that's the other thing, too.
I mean, if you're going to put it in the theater, it's got to be like, we don't want to be in there for 23 minutes or something like that.
Exactly.
Who's going to...
I mean, it's kind of like if you're late, you miss like 90% of the episode. Well, of course, there's always previews and stuff like that. But yes, I mean, I want at least, if I decide to get, I don't know, like a medium popcorn and a drink, I mean, I want to be able to finish that before the episode ends. You know what I mean? It's like I don't want it to be some
Better
really
eat
super quick
quickly.
thing. Yeah, right. Well, but no, that's a good point though. I mean, if they're gonna, it would have made sense if they say put episodes 1 and 2 in the theater. But if they're just putting
Mhm.
this one just single episode as a theatrical release, it's like, well, yeah, it's got to be something. But let me ask you this, and you guys in the chat can chime in on this too. And of course, if you're watching after the fact, of course, feel free to leave a comment. But are you satisfied with the run times of the show so far, or what?
Yeah, I mean, of course, you want more, but yeah, I think by and large, they're doing a decent job as far as runtimes, as far as getting us the information. I don't feel like there's any wasted episodes or any fillers.
That's a good
In
point,
this, I feel.
actually. That is a very good point. There really is not a lot of filler. I mean, I personally think that things would have benefited maybe because usually the thing is you want longer episodes, right? You want every episode to be like 50 minutes or an hour or whatever. But
Mhm.
and I think that this question will be answered a little bit more when we get toward the end, like maybe in episode 6 or 7, we might be able to say, hey, these things should have been longer. They could have covered more stuff. That's kind of what I'm thinking. Dragonfly Mask, though, says, feels like a test run for Filoni. Remember, 40 minutes is all you need to be considered theatrical length. Well, he's got a point. That's true, actually.
Mhm.
So, yeah. And it could be. I mean, that's a good point. I mean, this could very well be, because remember, they did greenlight a Filoni film. It's supposed to be kind of like an amalgamation of all the shows, right? So it's almost like an Avengers. If you look at all these shows as a standalone films, then this Filoni film is supposed to be like we're taking Ahsoka, The Mandalorian, Boba Fett, like all those guys, and we're putting them together in one film. And the plots that we've been following through all these are going to culminate into a single climax or whatever in this movie. So, yeah, you're absolutely right. It very well could be a test run for him. These brings up another interesting point. Episode probably has the highest budget. Yeah, I
Which is
really,
why they want to go to the theater to get their money back. Smart move.
yeah, exactly. Well, I'll tell you what, man. I mean, I really wish, I punched in. I didn't actually punch in my own thing, but I really need to find out what theaters this thing is being released. Because, okay, it said nothing around me, but what if it's like, so remember when we were trying to see Sharknado a long time ago
I
in
knew
the
you was about to
theater?
say that. I knew you were about to
And
say
it was like
that.
the theater that it was in was like, I don't know, like 50 miles away. It was some stupid thing, which we did drive, by the way. We actually
It was in
drove all the way. It was like an hour and a half or something stupid.
it was in Wall Lake.
Was it?
Mm-hmm.
It was still a
Wasn't that
ways
far.
away, though.
It was a way. It was. We just kept missing the exit, but that's a whole other story. But anyway,
Yeah, it's another story. But I mean, the point is that we tried to see Sharknado. It didn't. Did we get like the wrong night? Like the theater was like, well, I don't know, it's like tomorrow night or something.
Yeah, it's tomorrow night at midnight, not that day at midnight.
Yeah, right. Because it was a midnight thing. We were like a day early or something. So that's sort of what it reminds me of. It's like, what if Ahsoka's playing like, I don't know, like 2 hours away from here? You know?
Grand Rapids.
Yeah, now it wouldn't even seem like a big deal, right?
Nope.
So David says it's going to be a huge letdown. All right, thank you, Captain Positive. They'll probably talk the whole time. All right.
He's the Jim of this podcast.
Yeah, I mean, so much so, man. I mean, all right. Thank you.
Ever the pessimist.
Dr. Optimism over there with his and then Connor says there's a link to all the theaters that are hosting it. He said the closest I've seen is Chicago. Well, Chicago is only like 5.5, 6 hours.
Eric. No, Eric. You're not going to try to rationalize us carting ourselves 6 hours to go see something. And especially if David ends up being right, I'm really going to be mad.
Yeah, he says, well, maybe they add more, though. I mean, it could be. Dragonfly Mass says, I live in Florida, about 2 hours from Disney Springs where it's playing. Okay. Well, I'm really curious if anybody does, I mean, we'll see. We'll see what happens. Right. Because, I mean, as it is, I couldn't go anyway because I actually have jobs on Tuesday and Wednesday that'll occupy a lot of time. So there's no way I'd be able to get to the
Same
theater
here.
in time anyway. But if it was playing close, we'll see. David says, you all know deep down I'm right. I don't know, man. I actually think that episode 5 is going to be really good. Connor says, I can't wait to watch it on my couch.
I know
that's right. The home theater. We don't have to. I mean, it would be kind of cool though to see this as a theatrical release. It would.
It would.
But, I mean, the reality is, yes, I think I'm going to be watching it on my couch too, as are you. But either way, a week from tonight, we will definitely be reviewing it. Now, of course, as long as you're on this weird schedule where you're working on Friday nights and we have to make this thing a little bit later, our Monday show will be at the normal time. So Monday, 8 o'clock, we'll be live. Everything will be normal. Fridays, though, like I said, in our community tab, we're just going to have to play with this for a little bit. You guys are just going to have to be a little bit flexible with us for a while. It's not going to be forever, but for a little while, it's going to be in that 10, 11 o'clock range that we'll be hitting. So we'll let you know when that ends and we're back on our normal schedule. But just be prepared for Fridays. And so, of course, either way, whether we see this in the theater or whether, like Connor, we're on our couch watching it, we'll be reviewing it next Friday. Monday, we were talking about something with the Acolyte. What was that thing that you sent me?
Oh, essentially, we're going to be talking about the Acolyte. There's some updates with that show. As far as the lightsaber duels that are going to be taking place on the Acolyte, and even some locations. Like they're actually using one of the main things is they wanted to actually use real locations and not just be in the volume. So that's a positive too. So
okay, so that would be a lot like David's favorite show, Andor.
Exactly.
All right, so then Monday, make sure you guys join us where we'll be live and we'll be talking about the Acolyte. We're going to give Ahsoka a little bit of a break, focus on the Acolyte, which they did show a few clips from that at Celebration, I remember, I think.
Was it clips? Oh, I know we've seen photos. I don't know.
I thought that there was some clips. I thought that I could have sworn, I mean, maybe it's just a moment of being high or something. I don't know. I might have been on the, I don't know. I thought that I saw clips. Maybe I didn't. Maybe I just saw photos and I'm like filling in the blanks or something. I don't know. But either way, join us Monday night, 8 o'clock. We will be here talking about the Acolyte. So, again, if you didn't have a chance to hit the like button, hit the like button because it does help the algorithm and it helps us out and all that stuff. And hey, you know what? I think I'm going to do this. I haven't done this in a while. You guys could actually help support us too. If you want to do a monthly donation, you can be $5 a month. You get Padawan level, $10 a month, Jedi Knight level. Be like David at Jedi Master at $25 a month. You get some stuff. David just got through watching an exclusive. Not too long ago, we did the top 5 favorite Jedi that we had. We had an exclusive video, top 5 favorite Sith Lords, which, of course, is only available to our members. David ended up enjoying it. He liked Daryl's number 5. He didn't give me any love on my list, but that's okay. We'll just let that go. But yeah, if you guys want to, support us or go to buymeacoffee.com, head to head SW. The link is in the description. You guys can just throw us a couple of bucks or whatever. But either way, we love you guys. We appreciate any support. Your likes, subscribing, all that stuff. It all helps us out. And we just love doing this for you guys. All right, so until Monday night, I'm Eric Vansel.
And I'm Daryl Sanders.
May the Force be with you.
Always.
Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at HeadToHeadSW. Submit your questions for our next show. Visit our official website at headtoheadswpodcast.com. Until next time, may the Force be with you, always.